Good morning, everybody, and I welcome all members of the public and councillors to the latest meeting of North Northamptonshire's Executive, including those watching the meeting via our live stream and on YouTube. Members are reminded to keep your microphones muted unless invited to speak. And I'd also request that your phones are on silent and your laptops. And if they do go off, the Chairman's charity will gladly accept £10 from you as a fine. Anyone wishing to film any aspects of this meeting is invited to film from the table set aside for that purpose. Can I ask anyone choosing to film the meeting that they have their camera cover the entire meeting rather than an individual? Should I be of the view that any actions relating to filming of the meeting amount to disorderly conduct, I will advise you accordingly. If such actions continue, I will consider applying Meeting Procedure Rule 39.3 and adjourn the meeting and ask the individual concerned to leave. I hope this will not be necessary, and I invite you to record the focusing of your camera on the entire meeting. So moving on to the agenda items, are there any apologies for absences?
Thank you, Chair. We've received apologies from Cherise Monero, Executive Director of Children's Services.
Thank you very much. That's noted. So we move on to item 2, minutes of the meeting held on the 19th of December. Those minutes are on pages 5 to 28 of the agenda pack. Are there any comments in relation to their accuracy? No? Please, can I have a mover to move those minutes, please? Whose phone's ringing? The chairman will be very happy to receive your money, madam. Duly noted. I think she takes £10 notes. So the minutes have been moved. Could I have someone second them? Thank you, Councillor Brackenbury. The minutes have now been moved and seconded. Can I have a show of hands, please?
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. So we move on to item 3, members' declarations of interest. Members, do you have any declarations of interest to declare on the items on the agenda today? No. So we move on. Notifications to requests to address this meeting. There's several on here which I'm not going to go through, but I will bring you all in individually on the items that you have asked to speak to. So, item 5, the Annual Budget Scrutiny Report 25-26, and the Budget Consultation Submission from the Budget Scrutiny Panel of the Corporate Scrutiny Committee. I'd like to invite Councillor Hakewell to address the meeting. Councillor Hakewell, you have a matter of 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you, Chairman. The first thing to say is that no single person in this room today has read all 438 pages, or indeed the links contained within the pages, including myself. It's a ridiculous amount to read for us councillors and almost completely lacking in transparency for the community who will be paying the council tax to fund this budget. Equally, it is hardly part of the much publicised green agenda should those who aren't online even contemplate having a hard copy. Not a single member of North Northamptonshire's 360,000 residents was invited to listen and contribute to the scrutiny of this budget. Meetings were held online, which didn't even attract councillors to attend. You, Chairman, who are often vigorously critical of scrutiny in the past, are not listed as attending a single meeting, where you could have been challenged in person on the content of this budget. It seems unfair, if not hypocritical, to criticise others, inferring that your administration would do better and then fail to do so. As far as I can see, just 7 out of the 66 non-executive councillors are on the scrutiny panel. On only 1 of 5 occasions were 7 councillors present. Indeed, 1 councillor sent apologies for all 5 meetings with no substitute attending. We should call in the Centre for Governance and Scrutiny for a root and branch revision of the way scrutiny is carried out. There needs to be an effective team that holds the executive to account on behalf of our council taxpayers. The significant resources put into the executive advisory panels should be directed towards incisive scrutiny committees, executive advisory panels, which in my opinion should be abolished, have less members, but even then, less experience of attendance and are on occasions cancelled due to not being quorate. Just taking food waste, page 78, officers clarified that this was a compulsory government scheme to be introduced. Some grant funding from the government was coming. What deficit between the government grant and the actual cost will have to be paid by local council taxpayers? Home to school transport, same page, concern over the considerable increase in spend on transport, which was expected to increase. This has been a constant budget pressure, but no scrutiny has taken place in 3 years to find solutions and cost savings. Why not? Lack of enforcement. There was concern expressed on page 79 over the 900 planning enforcement cases, which were still unresolved. It was considered that due to the lack of enforcement planning, issues were not being enforced under any circumstances. Planning is one of the most controversial aspects of the council's business. When permissions are given or refused, the community expects enforcement to take place.
So that's your time, Councillor Hakewell. Thank you very much.
Beautifully done.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely on the button. Thank you.
Perfect. I wouldn't expect anything less of you, Councillor Hakewell. Perfect. So I'd like now to invite Councillor Lynn Buckingham, who chairs our corporate scrutiny function, and to present her report to the executive. So over to you, Councillor Buckingham.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everybody. It's my pleasure to bring this report to you this morning. And I'd like to thank a lot of people before we go on. So I'd like to thank the executive and the portfolio holders for coming and engaging with the whole process of budget scrutiny. It's not easy. It's very intensive over a period of weeks. We have been quite robust in some of our stuff, in some of our looking. We've managed to make some recommendations which we hope that you will look at and come back to us formally on that. We'd also like to thank the officers because, you know, we've had little sessions at the end of our task and finish group where we've looked at, you know, what more information do we need, what do we need our key lines of inquiry to be, and you've engaged beautifully in that process. Obviously, I'd like to thank the finance team because they've done an amazing job going forward. It's not an easy task. You have so much external and internal pressures, and we've managed to discuss most of those. And Councillor Hakewell, whilst I understand that you think that we haven't done the job that we're supposed to do, and as I said to another of the people in this room, budget scrutiny isn't the finish of, this is the start of the process which should carry out through the year and align to the medium-term financial plans. So, you know, it is a task and finish group. There were 11 sessions that we adhered to. And I think that we as a team have done a good job as far as we can on the first part of this to give those assurances that people need, but also understand that this is a delicate budget and, you know, there is a word of caution on some of those external and internal things that going on. So, you know, staffing costs, highways, home to school transport, children's service, adult services, all have their own peaks and troughs, as they were, through the year. So it's just keeping an eye on those. But there were also some good practice areas around data collection, use of data in all the directives, and the children's services where they've identified savings that they can make. All those things have been, you know, really good to see. And finally, I'd like to finish on that positive note, those good things that we've seen throughout this. You know, it is a very delicate balance between corporate strategic as well as just the money. It's how you spend the money. It's not just about having those budgets in place, it's how you spend it for the good of the residents, and we think we've done a good job on that. And on that, I will obviously go to the recommendations on page 30. So you received the annual budget scrutiny report as Appendix A. You endorse the enhanced budget scrutiny process undertaken to scrutinise the draft budget for 25-26, and you delegate authority to executive directors in consultation with the executive portfolio holders and the chair of the corporate scrutiny to agree an action plan with detailed timetable to formally respond to the recommendations, if you would. Thank you very much.
No, thank you, Councillor Buckingham, and I would like to express our sincere gratitude to yourself and the Budget Scrutiny Panel and the Corporate Scrutiny Committee for their diligent review of the budget, draft budget proposals of 25-26. The Executive and myself have carefully considered the annual scrutiny report approved by the Corporate Scrutiny Committee and acknowledges the quality and the impact, more importantly, of those recommendations. I have assured yourself today, the Corporate Scrutiny Chair, that I will provide a formal response to your recommendations, and that will be sent after this meeting today. I just thought of a process to send it after the meeting. We support the recommendations aimed at further improving our financial monitoring systems and the longer-term planning. We are already taking steps to refine how financial information is presented to elected members, ensuring better clarity and understanding. The establishment of a Budget Performance and Risk Board has already provided ongoing oversight and has further strengthened our approach to transformation and tackling future financial challenges. So our Executive Member for Finance and our Executive Director for Finance are already reviewing how they can further strengthen the information presented to elected members, and the recommendation from the scrutiny will play a key role in that review. So thank you very much for that. On governance and stakeholder engagement, we agree that the need for meaningful and inclusive consultation, the budget consultation process in particular, is vital, and we are committed to enhancing public participation to better reflect the views of our residents and our stakeholders. As always, there's more that we can do. You know, this is not the perfect situation. We can always do better, and we can learn and implement all this in future years. As you've said, this is a beginning of a process, and we will see that through. We share Scrutiny's ambition for additional oversight in children's services, and will be bringing forward proposals for a dedicated Children's Scrutiny Committee to Council in March, to ensure we continue to focus on the best outcome for our younger people. Our transformational journey continues, and a strong emphasis on service, efficiency and innovation. We'll develop a comprehensive transformation plan focused on prioritising services and improvements and achieving savings and delivering clear benefits that can be demonstrated to our residents. We welcome Scrutiny's assessment, and we need to be a data-driven organisation where robust intelligence informs all of our decisions. Again, Councillor Buckingham, I'd like to thank you for everything that you've done through this process, and we shall move on. So, exec members, I would like to see if you've got any comments in relation to the budget process. So scrutiny, sorry. Mark, Councillor Rowley.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'd like to thank Councillor Buckingham. It was a very well run, I felt, scrutiny of the budget. Certainly enjoyed my interrogation. It was very frank and everybody listened, so it was really good. One comment that was made by the Speaker was a 400-page document is a lot to read. I've read it, but it only works out at £1 million a page, which explaining £1 million on one page is good going. So it could have been a hell of a lot bigger than 400 pages, but fully support the report that Councillor Buckingham's put forward.
Thank you very much, Councillor Rowley. Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Buckingham. I've really enjoyed the sessions that we've had with Children's Services, and not just with Children's Services, the Children's Trust as well, where we have separate sessions with them. And to them, I'd like to thank them for taking the time to come out and explain, you know, the process and be part of it, because that is important that the Trust are, the communication with the Trust is there, and it absolutely is there. Councillor Buckingham, your robust questions are fantastic, and they really are, because they're honest questions as well, and they're questions that some other members should be asking as well. And so this gives us the opportunity to be able to answer those questions and identify savings that we have created within the Children's Services. And these savings aren't just savings, they're actually better outcomes for the children as well, which is, for me, the most important part of that. So thank you for identifying that. Thank you for asking for those robust questions. And as the leader has alluded to, it's coming to full council in March about children's scrutiny, and that's absolutely the right thing to do. You know, it's the second biggest spending department within after Councillor Mercer's, and so it should have a separate scrutiny area within that, and I welcome that coming in March to full council. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Councillor Brackenbury.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everybody. Well, in concert with colleagues, Councillor Buckingham, I'd like to thank you and all the members of your of the Budget Scrutiny Committee for their interest, their engagement, and their clear understanding of some of the issues, some of the pressures, some of the challenges that the council faces. Certainly during the Place and Economy sessions, I was struck by the shrewdness of a lot of the questions which were asked. I hope that we gave satisfaction in responding to those questions. And yeah, of course, what is, I think, welcome and refreshing out of this is looking through the reports of the individual meetings, that there was no attempt to be other than open and transparent. That issues were explained quite clearly in the reports, and I think that reflects a lot of credit on your team and the officers who've supported it, as well as members and officers who were in the Star Chamber being interrogated. That's not fair, is it? But being delicately questioned on their various areas. So it's a great process. Thank you for your leadership in it. Thank you for your courteous and pleasant chairing of those sessions. It's not easy, is it? And let's take the findings on board and move forward for the greater good of everybody, all 360,000 people in Northamptonshire. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brackenbury. Councillor Bunday.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of things I'd like to comment on. That I attended virtually every single one of the meetings. I don't know whether I dare say I attended them all, because I might have just missed one off. But can I congratulate you, Councillor Buckingham, on doing a fabulous job? I was very impressed. I have read the agenda several times, sadly, and one of the things that frustrates me about these public meetings is that the officers can't answer for themselves. So on behalf of the finance team, I'd like to thank you for your kind words, and we would assure you that we do agree that it should be a continuing process. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Bunday. Councillor Howell.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'd sort of like to echo really the thanks to yourself, Chair, and all those members on the scrutiny panel who came along to all of the different sessions. From my part, obviously, it was not only an opportunity to explain how the budget is spent and what we spend it on, but to also highlight some of the amazing work that we do out in the field, so to speak, with our leisure services and all of those people that we engage with. We do an amazing amount of work, you know, trying to get people out there and keep them healthy and keeping our swimming pools open and all those. Despite of the challenges that we do have, obviously around the country there are swimming pools closing and all sorts of these leisure services are being hit quite hard, but we are managing really, really well to keep our services going and within budget. And I think that is really down to the amazing staff that we have here and officers who keep control of the budget under our guidance as the executive as well. And it's credit to everyone, I think, in the organisation that works so hard and understands that it's public money and that they are responsible and we are responsible for it. So, yeah, thank you very much. I've thoroughly enjoyed the sessions as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Howes. Councillor Mercer.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to echo the comments other people have made because I have two particular areas that I attended, and the adults in one and the public health in the other. So I was really impressed with the whole process and the way the questions were asked. And, you know, thank you to you for the chairing it and also the members of that committee. It also gave us an opportunity, I think, to explain our priorities, challenges, opportunities, and I think it sort of focuses the mind, and it's a really good opportunity to do that, to explain all the things that we've been doing really over the last sort of year, and you know, really get to grips with the spending and the possibilities, but also the challenges that we all have. So thank you very much indeed from my part as well, and yes, I enjoyed the sessions as well. It's strange when you think of enjoying that sort of session, but it was very, very useful as well.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mercer. And really, just to sort of wrap up a little bit on this, clearly all my executive members have been in front of you, and you've certainly put them on the rack by the sounds of it. The reports that I've had back from them as of the leader of the authority, I would always make sure that my exec report back to me on how things have gone and their proposals and so on. But I think what we got here, Councillor Buckingham, in your chairmanship and Mr Pengelly's before, was that we've got an independent eye on the budget from the administration. It was something that we were very keen to do from the outset, was to ensure that we had that independent eye from outside of our political sphere as a Conservative administration, and you've done a fantastic job on that. I think what I like about the process is ever evolving, and that's down to your drive as the chair of that particular committee. It's down to the drive of our superb officers to make sure that we push ourselves. We're better than we were last year or the year before, and certainly better than the previous councils ever were in holding the administration to scrutiny. So I'm pleased that that's an ever-evolving journey. I like the fact that it's evolving. I like the fact that we're going to be better next year and the year after and so on. Nothing's perfect, but you know, with that type of drive, that ambition amongst everybody, we can make it as good as we possibly can. What I'm going to do now is hand to you just to maybe sum up some of the comments that have been made, give you the opportunity. You don't have to if you don't want to. I can move straight to the recommendations, but if you want to sum up and speak to anyone, you can.
Thank you. And I would just like to say, you know, on behalf, and we were a cross-party team on this, you know, it wasn't, the whole process wasn't political. It was about us working together to get the best out of, you know, and that certainly came through. Really enjoyed you all coming, and you know, the different focus this year, as Councillor Mercer said, in terms of, you know, what are your priorities for the year? What are you think the threats and the weaknesses are? So it was getting that as well, that whole thing, and don't worry, because all the rest of the team gave me their thumb screws back, so I'll be using that for next year as well. Thank you very much for all your very nice comments, and I will pass that back to the rest of the team. Thank you.
You're absolutely welcome, Councillor Buckingham. So, Executive, the recommendations are set out on page 30 of the agenda pack. They have been, no, they've not been moved and seconded yet. Could I have someone move the report? Thank you very much. Actually, did Councillor? Okay. So, Councillor Bunday has moved that report and Councillor Howe has seconded that report. Can I have a show of hands, please?
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. So we now move on to item 6, the General Fund Budget 25-26 and the medium-term financial position. And I'd like to invite Mr. Chris Stamborough to address the meeting. Mr. Stamborough, you have maximum of 3 minutes, but I don't need to tell you that. You know the rules.
Thank you. There's so much I could say about the budget proposals, but 3 minutes isn't long enough, so I've got 3 questions. Looking at pressures within enabling services, there's an inflationary pressure arising from an increase in revenues and benefits postage costs, an ongoing £100,000 per annum. There's no other published detail. In October 2024, First Class Post was increased by 22.2%. Let's assume a similar increase in this current year. Because this is an inflationary pressure, this implies the budget for postage in 24-25 is around £450,000, and that it will increase in 25-26 to £550,000 per annum. This isn't postage across the whole council, it's postage for the revenues and benefits section only. It implies that you expect to send out hundreds of thousands of letters from the section in 25-26. How do you justify spending such a huge amount of council taxpayers' money on postage? Are there really no other methods of communicating with people? Turning to corporate resources, we have an ongoing pressure described as an inflationary increase in the bank charges budget of £500,000. Let's say the current level of inflation in the bank charges sector is 10%. That implies a bank charges budget in 24-25 of £5 million. Doesn't that strike you as rather a lot? There's no detail in the published information. Are council taxpayers being swindled by your bankers, or is it something else? What's the explanation here, please? And finally, minimum revenue provision. We're told the council has continued with different MRP calculations in its policy, which reflected the historical position of legacy authorities. In other words, you carried forward the way the previous councils calculated MRP. On completing the disaggregation process, we're told, I take that to be a reference to the agreement reached with West Northamptonshire Council last August over the disaggregation of the former Northamptonshire County Council balance sheet. You're moving to a different method for calculating MRP, yielding an ongoing saving of £5.3 million per year. Doesn't this mean that since vesting day in 2021, council taxpayers in North Northamptonshire have paid over £20 million extra MRP that they need not have paid? That's £20 million that can't be clawed back, thanks to the inability of Conservative-run West Northamptonshire Council to reach an agreement with Conservative-run North Northamptonshire Council. Isn't it £20 million of taxpayers' money that could have been put to a lot better use, but which is now lost? Thanks for listening. I look forward to your answers.
Thank you very much, Mr Stanborough. Councillor Hakewell, would you like to come and address the meeting? And you have 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you, Leader. I've only got 3 pages, so I'm only 3 million of the 400. This is yet another budget where the people of North Northamptonshire will be paying more council tax for less services. Roads will continue to deteriorate, full of potholes, parents will pay more to get their children to school, and planning enforcement, as we've always said, is minimal. The list goes on. Another year of inflation-busting 5% hike in the council tax. What has changed in this budget today, or will be changing, as a result of the scrutiny process carried out in January? The word risk appears 369 times in the £438 million pages. This budget, presented by the Executive today, is a risk to everyone in our community. This is a politician's budget prepared by our hard-working officers, who I absolutely admire, but at the direction of this committee. The decisions are made by the executive councillors in this room. Page 104. I'm sure you've all read it, so you'll get to page 104 quickly. I'll pause. 2.33. This would contribute around 10.2 million per annum towards the service priorities and would represent a Band D level of council tax for North Northamptonshire of £1,827.06. That's an increase per annum of £86 per year. It may be minimised in the publicity into a weekly amount, but residents are experiencing multiple small weekly increases in their expenditure, which add up to a significant increase in their cost of living. Worse still is this Band D figure does not include the council tax for town, parish, fire authority. On page 114, I guess you've all got to 114 already, it shows that there is a minimum £126 million black hole in the council's future finances with an annual 5% increase of council tax. But without that increase in council tax, it's £159 million. Page 143. The reserve strategy includes a range for the level of general fund balances to be at a minimum of 5% and a maximum of 10%. The level of reserves included in this budget is 6%. The minimum is 5%. We're at 6%. The council is at the bottom end of its own reserve strategy, just 1% off the minimum balance. Use of reserves is a continual feature in the failure of councils who go into section 114. They use up their reserves. Item 10 on the same page details the use of capital receipts to meet revenue spending when these receipts should be used to invest on infrastructure.
Councillor Hakewell, your 3 minutes is now up. Thank you very much.
Your timing is just like mine. Thank you.
Councillor Maxwell, I'd like to invite you to the floor to speak. You have a maximum of 3 minutes.
Good morning. Agenda item 6, page 109. The Council's Chief Finance Officer has a statutory duty to issue a Section 114 notice if they believe the Council will be unable to meet its expenditure commitments from its income. Question. The Chief Finance Officer does not need to tell councillors if it has to issue this notice. However, how does this stack up in council's transparency with the public? How would the public trust us if we're not told? Questions we are able to meet over the expenditure and commitment for 2025-26. This is from the autumn budget of 2024 HC 295, This is what Labour Chancellor
Councillor
has
Maxwell,
issued.
you talk about a Section 114 notice, which is completely irrelevant to the paper that is in front of us. We're not proposing a 114 notice, nor are we anywhere near proposing 114 notices, Section 114 notices. I think you are off beat of what you should be talking about, I'm afraid.
Well, actually, this is what's written down in the report, and I'd like to finish this and explain how the Labour Chancellor has issued this that councillors do not need to know whether or not you're in financial difficulties. That is what's stated. Going on, free school dinners during the holidays, page 1112. The Household Support Grant Fund 2025 to 2026 used for free school dinner vouchers for eligible children during the holidays. It has been confirmed that we are waiting for confirmation of the future should this grant be terminated. Therefore, has the Council been looking at the implications should this fund be extended for 26-27? Therefore, as a council, we should make sure that all children qualify for free lunches will continue in future. Yesterday, the Police Fire Commissioner stated that we have 60,000 children in poverty in the county. Is this true? And 35,000 in relative poverty. Can we make sure that we provide children with a meal in future? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Maxwell. I just want to confirm the fact that if in the worst case scenario this organisation was to issue such a notice, a 114 notice, there is a duty for myself and the Chief Executive to be informed of that. Naturally, I would then inform the elected members if there was a 114 notice to be issued. So it would go to members. Members would understand. So I'm not sure where you get that out of that report, but it's something that wouldn't happen in that. The process is there for it to be dealt with by members. I would now like to invite Councillor Bunday, Executive Member for Finance Transformation, to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just responding to some of the comments that have been made. The pressures within revenues and benefits, basically a lot of that amounts to sending out the actual council tax demands. And that does cost a lot of money, but to make sure that we are corresponding to everybody who pays council tax, it's the only reasonable way of doing it. Bank charges, we actually turn over £1.4 billion, and that does incur quite a few bank charges. And MRP harmonisation between not just the old county council, but also between the other 4 districts and boroughs. MRP is not lost because MRP is a reserve that's there to actually pay down the loan when the loan actually matures. So that money hasn't been lost. That money is actually sitting there. More tax, less services. From Councillor Hakewell, I would suggest that some of our services, which are our demand-led services, are actually increasing, and that is a risk to the council, and that is something that we need to address. Inflation might be at 2% now, or around 2%. It went up to over 10%. And when inflation goes up and then it drops down, it doesn't mean that the actual cost drops down. It just means that the cost is not going up at the rate that it was going up before. So as a consequence, we still have a lot more to pay for. I'll cover council tax in what I'm going to say. What I'd also say, in addition to the comment on section 114, within our...
I think that's now £20 owed to the chairman's charity. This is an expensive meeting, Councillor Buckingham, for you.
I'll stretch.
I think you better put it on silence.
I'll stretch the meeting on a bit so that we can make more money for the chairman, I think. What I was going to say was, within the report, the Section 151 officer has to actually prepare a Section 25, which is their actual state of the budget and the state of the finances of the council. So that is a good measure. Okay, so moving on to the budget, this report sets out the final revenue budget for 25-26 and the medium-term financial plan for North Northamptonshire Council. North Northamptonshire Council has bold aspirations. The council is committed to delivering the Big 50 vision for North Northamptonshire, and the budget plays an important role in this, along with that of our partners. Stable financial management has been a key focus for the executive, and for the 5th consecutive year, I present proposals for another balanced budget that protects frontline services and does not rely on the council's reserves. North Northamptonshire Council is a key employer, locally employing over 3,000 committed staff. We also make a major contribution towards the local supply chain, with a net budget in the region of £400 million. This, coupled with the vital services the council provides, brings the importance of stable financial management into sharp focus. The draft General Fund budget proposals were presented to the Executive on December 19th. As I said in January, this was provisional upon the announcement of the government's finance settlement, of which the proposal was published on the 18th of December. These proposals have been subject to consultation, which ended on the 24th of January. The final local government finance settlement was set before Parliament earlier this week. Engaging our local communities in our future plans is important to us, and these budget proposals have been consulted upon, and this consultation ended on the 24th of January, the results of which are included at Appendix E of this report. During the consultation period, the draft budget has been scrutinised by the Corporate Scrutiny Committee by Directorate, and their observations are at Appendix G of this report. The revenue budget 25-26 and the medium-term financial plan forms part of the full suite of budget reports being presented to the Executive today. These include the Housing Revenue Account Budget 25-26, the Capital Strategy, Capital Programme 25-26 to 28-29, and the Treasury Management Strategy. Members will be well aware that one of the sources of council income comes from the government. Core spending power measures this core revenue funding available for local authority services in the local government financial settlement. The core spending power has increased nationally by 6%, but some authorities have fared better than others. Unfortunately, as I said at the Executive on the 16th of January, we have not done as well as we had expected. We have had to adjust the budget down by £1.2 million. This has been offset by improved projections of business rates growth and a review of the original inflationary assumptions for the waste management contract. This proposed budget includes a balanced general fund budget for the 5th consecutive year, 25-26, with a net spend requirement of £400.7 million, which excludes the dedicated schools grant. In line with the commitments made to our corporate plan, this budget demonstrates continued investment in frontline services. For example, we have a commitment to help people live healthier, more active, independent and fulfilled lives, as well as care for our young people, providing them with opportunities to help them flourish. To meet this commitment, this budget sets out a further investment of £51.6 million, which includes adult social care and children's services. helping to protect and improve vital services to our most vulnerable people. This investment is in part funded by savings, efficiencies and income generation of £26.3 million. This includes the continuation of savings already included as part of the 25-26 medium-term financial plan, which remains deliverable, with the remainder being met through improved business rates income, council tax income and government grants. The government financial settlement is predicated upon councils increasing council tax by the referendum maximum. This is an increase of 2.99% for the core council tax and 2% for adult social care precept. This results in a new Band D equivalent council tax of £1,827.06, an average weekly increase of £1.67. Most properties in North Northants are in bands A and B, and this equates to increases of £1.11 and £1.30 respectively. I am pleased to confirm that there will be no change to the local council tax support scheme, which will continue at 25%. As we all know, we live in uncertain times. The proposed budget therefore includes a contingency to mitigate against unforeseen cost pressures, totalling £2.6 million. This is equivalent to 0.65% of the council's net budget and will be used to meet any risks around the wider economy and increased demand for services. One of the council's key commitments is to deliver modern public services. The proposed budget will make prudent use of reserves, support one-off investment in service improvement, fund time-limited projects, pump prime schemes and help manage risk both in year and across future years. Our reserve strategy is outlined at Appendix D. We have some reserves that are earmarked for specific things. Our general fund reserve stands at £23.4 million to meet forthcoming events where the precise date and amount required cannot be accurately predicted. As I remind members at every opportunity, you can only spend reserves once, and sufficient plans must always be in place as to how reserves will be replenished. Officers will continue to seek efficiencies to help address the budget requirements from 2026 to 27 and into future years. Also, an indicative dedicated schools grant settlement of £427.2 million has been predicted. The table at 5.3 sets out the budget for 25-26 and the medium-term financial plan to 2029, which clearly shows that we must continue our transformation journey to close the budget gap in future years. The local government peer review last year stated that the budget and fiscal responsibility should be owned by each of the council's directorates, which I have been championing from day one, and I am proud that we have an executive and directorates that are committed to this aim. The government, in its policy statement on the 28th of November 2024, reconfirmed the extension of the flexible use of capital receipt scheme to the 31st of March 2030, also removing the restriction with respect to redundancy costs imposed in April 2022 that limits the use of flexible to statutory redundancy costs only. We have updated our strategy accordingly. A list of eligible projects is listed at 5.1 of Appendix J. A budget of this magnitude will always carry risk. One of the major risks is going to be those of our demand-led services. Another is the increase in employers' national insurance contributions. Even though North Northants Council has received notification as part of the final settlement, a contribution of £2.6 million, it will have unintended consequences on our suppliers, partners and service providers. This will inevitably lead to pressures that could ultimately affect the cost of the services we deliver, in particular adult social care. As I said earlier, we must continue our transformation journey and continue at pace. This budget is balanced, achieved by not affecting our frontline services or reliance on reserves. This budget allows the Council to continue to deliver the ambitious commitments that we have made to everyone who makes North Northamptonshire their home and place of work. And with that, Chair, I'm happy to propose the recommendations of paragraph 3.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bunday. And what an achievement your team has done. Again, you know, we've brought a budget forward that it protects frontline investment. It builds on the infrastructure that we have here in North Northamptonshire, and we're living within our means. And that's an important thing for any local authority to do these days, and we will continue that. I don't begin to imagine the complexities behind this budget, and the 151 officers shown me spreadsheets in the past that she has on her screen which look absolutely complex and way beyond my level of comprehension. But I'm pleased that we have a professional team behind us, a professional team of officers who advise this executive to get to this position. It is vital that, you know, when we look at these budgets, that they are sense-checked, they go through the process, as we already have heard with Councillor Buckingham, through that scrutiny process. And it's important that we make sure within all our budgets that we protect the most vulnerable within society. And this is exactly what this budget does. And a budget of this size doesn't come without risks, as we know, but those risks are managed throughout the year. There is some unknowns around the hike in employers' national insurance, of course, but, you know, we'll do what we always do here in North Northamptonshire, and we will deal with it in one way or the other. And I'm confident it's in our financial expertise within the team that Claire heads up that we will be able to manage that and deal with whatever headwinds we face. Executive members, do we have anything to say in relation to this budget process? Councillor Brackenbury.
Thank you very much, Chair. And, well, obviously to kick off, Councillor Bunday and Mrs Edwards, I'd just like to thank you and all your teams for the enormous amount of work and energy and commitment that has been put into delivering the 5th balanced budget that North Northamptonshire has put in place since its inception. It's a bleak world out there, there's no question about it. We, in concert with local authorities up and down the country, we are facing a lot of pressures on the demand-led services, particularly on adult social care, particularly on children's services and issues like home-to-school transport. And these are statutory services and have to be delivered. Obviously, we are always seeking ways in which the delivery of such services is as efficient as possible and provides as good value to the council taxpayer as possible, but nevertheless they do have to be provided. And I also know that other directorates have stepped up to the plate with efficiencies of their own to in some way offset the £51.6 million of additional investment which has had to have gone into these areas. To balance all of this is a work of, you know, it's a really excellent piece of work that the whole finance team have done to keep all those plates spinning. And we discussed it earlier, but of course you're exactly right, Chair, that it isn't something that the executive and the various directorates have done by themselves. At every step of the way, the preparation of this budget has been subjected to rigorous scrutiny. So once again, a big shout out to Councillor Buckingham, who's already making a noticeable contribution to that budget in terms of the Chairman's Fund. So congratulations to that. But it has been well scrutinised. It is a budget which is owned by every member of North Northamptonshire Council and every resident and council taxpayer has some stake in this business as well. It's a balanced budget. We are not spending reserves in great measure. As Councillor Bunday rightly observes, once you do spend reserves, they're gone. So we are always very, very cautious about that. And I commend it. So once again, thank you, the team.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brackenbury. Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Leader, and I do support this this budget, and I'm going to talk about my area, so children's services. So I'm going to review the comment about more cost, less services. So let's look at SEND. There is more SEND provision happening in North Northants that is absolutely needed. There are more buildings coming forward. There are more children that have with EHCPs. That is happening within North Northants. So there is an increase in the service there. There is an increase in family support. We've got a huge family hub programme that has started. We're carrying it on, we're continuing it, and it's working. It's working with those families that need it. We've got an increasing in early intervention, so we're working with those families to support them at an early stage. We're working with the youth justice system to look at ways of getting children out of crime before they get into crime. We are increasing in child exploitation with the Children's Trust. We're looking at ways of stop them from getting into gangs. We've got a new unit that has opened that is working with those children, those vulnerable children that are likely to get into gangs. We're increasing support in care leavers. A few executives ago, we talked about having extra buildings, extra facilities for our care leavers to have, our flats, our facilities, our drop-in centres. That's all increasing within that. We're increasing youth provision. We have our first youth ambassador that now works for North Northants, which has started the Student Council, which has started the Student Parliament. This is working for the young people of North Northants, and we need to increase that, and that's within the budget to increase that. We're increasing school places, and absolutely, we've got children coming into North Northants that are coming from other areas of the United Kingdom. They're coming into North Northants. We need to increase those student places, and that's what we're doing with schools. We're increasing those. So this budget is not just a budget that is just asking money for the sake of asking money. We are actually increasing that council tax because we need that money to support those children within it, and we can absolutely show what we are doing with this money. So I do support this budget.
Thank you very much, Councillor Edwards. Just looking around the table, is there any other comments? Councillor Nickley.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Got my tongue-tied there, sorry.
Yeah. Look, I completely agree, Councillor Bunday. This budget will put us in a great position to continue to work towards that Big 50 vision and, after all, build a better future for North Northamptonshire. But it also demonstrates the responsible financial management of this administration and what we can do and effectively spend the money which we've been given. But I also want to end by thanking you for the amount of work that's gone into this and all your officers. A huge and vast amount of work that's been put into this and countless effort. And thank you for that.
Thank you very much. Councillor Mercer.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like, first of all, to address a question that Councillor Maxwell placed about Household Support Fund, as that comes into my portfolio. This was started by the Conservative government in 2021 as a result of the pandemic. And yes, it has paid for free school lunches for that period. Very grateful that that has been continued, and as I understand it, for the next year. After that, we don't know. One of the problems with that, it's always been 6 months, then another 6 months, and another 6 months, and we can never plan ahead, but we will do our best with the money that we do get for that, and we do appreciate that the young people do need that to help them during the holidays. And turning to the budget, the adults, as everyone said, it's the largest budget, 39% of the budget, £148 million. It rolls off the tongue, but it's a lot of money. But it covers looking after our most vulnerable, people over 65, people with learning disabilities. At any one time, it says at 7.17, around 3% of the over 65s receive long-term care organised by this council. But over half the population will be known to social care at some time. It's an ageing population. You know, we have to cope with that. But this year, we're budgeting 23.7 million for adult social care. Now, looking at the figures, previously the numbers were going up and up and up. This year, they haven't gone up quite so much, and that's due to the work that we're putting in. Things like Support North Northants that help stop people going into care, things like Thackley Green. So we are, although we can never predict exactly what the pressures are going to be, we are helping to keep that down. But the other thing is the complexity of cases, and that's something that, again, we can't predict. Now, the government allows us to raise an extra 2% for adult social care. The public were asked about that, and over 50% strongly agreed or tended to agree with that. I think people understand that the money has to come from somewhere, and so they understand the pressure, and they support us in that. But unfortunately, that 2% doesn't cover all our costs. So we've allowed 5.850 million for inflationary pressure, huge amounts again, but that covers the national living wage. If that goes up, as it did this year, for over 6%, we have to cope with that. The main pressure, as said, is demographic growth, and again we've allowed 15.538 million for that. As I said, it's an ageing population, and we have to try and predict what level of the service will be, and we have a reserve of 2.534 million, and that helps us a smoothing reserve. So if we suddenly get an influx, that we can cope with that. But it's all worked into this budget, all fully costed. We have to continuously, though, look at better ways of working, of transformation. And one of those is to help people live in their own homes for longer, to expand domiciliary care. And that's cheap, not only cheaper for the council, it's much better for individuals to remain in their own home. There's a much better way of organising things. And we are also investing in enablement with things like Thackley Green. That has also helped tremendously to look after people. But we're also looking at AI systems, efficiencies in lots of things like note-taking, like a system called Doc at Home, which helps keep people at home being cared for under the supervision of medical staff, but in their own home. And we've invested in other things like razor chairs, which helps people, if they have a fall, to not have to go into hospital, saving time and helping people along the way. As it says in Appendix B, we're anticipating savings in commissioning approaches. We're recommissioning several contracts, and we're hoping in that way to keep down the costs. We also brought in a firm of consultants to look at the sprints, which is what they call where we look at ways we can save money and get our costs down. And they were very impressed with those and have backed what we're doing. Some of them they've said we should do, but it's not this year, it's perhaps next year that we'll get the benefit of them, but they agreed with them. And as well as the precept, we get grants from government. Now, there are things like the social care mobility, social care market sustainability and improvement. I had to read that off because that's a big mouthful. That's 5.222 million. Now, that helps us to keep the look after the providers, the people that look after our elderly. If they're on our framework, it allows them to increase the fees year on year, and that helps them to keep viable. That allows them to cope with the national minimum wage. However, as is mentioned, national insurance, unfortunately, it's not going to cover that, and that is a risk. It's particularly at risk in our care industry, because there are a lot of people that work part-time, and the lowering of the threshold has brought a lot more people into the national insurance, employers' national insurance, and whereas we are coping with our own costs internally, these providers, as Councillor Bundy said, are not provided for, so that is a risk. Then I have also public health, and that's a ring-fence budget. Last year, 18.97 million, and that's only 5% of the council's budget, but it does a huge amount. Unfortunately, it doesn't come out at the same time as the main announcements. We still don't know what our budget is for next year, but we work on the basis that it will be just a little more than we last year for allowing for inflation. So that's what it has been costed in, and as well as funding the core services, which is outlined in 7.29, to actually keep people healthy and all the other social things that public health does. We also help to provide services in other areas, like in leisure, keeping people active, VCSE grants, social prescribing, etc. So it does a huge amount, that smaller budget, but it's really helping people. And this budget is providing for that. As I say, we still don't know exactly how much we're going to get, but we're modelling 686,000 increase due to staffing increases, particularly due to our 0 to 19 services and sexual health. And we have to also take account for the agenda for change, which is the close working with the health service, and we have to look at their wage rates as well. But the other thing we are doing is putting aside £2 million in a reserve just in case there's a pandemic. So some sort of thing in the scale of pandemic, so that we would be able to cope with that should the eventuality arise. We hope that never rises, but we have to be prepared. And so I commend this budget to look after that. Also, obviously, as everyone else said, a huge amount of work that's gone into it, and thank the officers for all their attention to detail, not just now, but over the years. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mercer. Councillor Howell.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Mercer. Actually, moving on from what you said within leisure, obviously, we work very closely with public health, and thank you very much, Jane. Jane supports us very highly with specific funding through the public health into our leisure programme. And one of the things I'd like to say is, obviously, health and well-being of our community is vital. And leisure is actually a tonic, because the more we invest in our leisure services, the better the health of our community is. And that in turn brings cost savings. So, you know, sometimes it's very short-sighted to think that leisure is one of those services that can actually be the first to go, because that has a massive knock-on effect. And although we have worked really, really well in creating cost savings. We've done that through efficiencies and restructuring. We have not depleted the service at all. In fact, we've improved the service. We've created wellbeing walks, active family fun days throughout the whole of Northamptonshire. We're continuing to do the swimming schools. We're providing all activities in our libraries. We support our theatres and our attractions. We support adult learning in some of our facilities also. We have fantastic venues like museums and our archaeological resource centre with massive volunteering opportunities to bring people out. And even those volunteering opportunities allow people different levels of activity. So even in the leisure services, although we have had to make some dramatic cost savings, the service continues to develop and it continues to thrive. And I'd just like to thank everybody involved, Kerry, who is my AD, and Jack Pishorn in the cultural team. They do an amazing job keeping the service going. As I said, you know, the budgets are tight, and but we continue to provide amazing service. So thank you to the team and everybody who's worked on readdressing the structure and making the efficiencies, but as I said, ensuring that we still provide those wonderful services that we have in North Northamptonshire for our residents. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hell. Just looking around the table, there's no other further comments. So at this point, I think I'm going to bring in Claire Edwards, the Finance Director and 151 Officer, because I think it's only right that you head up that department, that you should have a contribution to this, Claire. And so over to you, Claire.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for all your kind words and obviously the work that we do undertake in delivering another balanced budget. What I will say, it is a complex and complicated report that we have to deliver every year, and I couldn't do that without the support from my team and the support from corporate leadership team and the support from the executive around this table today. So again, I would thank you as well in terms of the support that's made this budget process actually really stress-free, as much as it can be stress-free, but the whole process from start to finish has run really smoothly, and I do sort of thank everyone who supported us in delivering this process this year. What I will say is that we obviously do have a challenge ahead of us. There are risks that we do have within the budget, and we will continue to work diligently with the teams that we have to ensure that we can deliver a transformation plan that does address our deficits that we are looking at in 26-27. And I'm very confident that we will obviously look to achieve that and actually look to achieve a balanced budget across the whole MTFP. And the process does continue, it doesn't stop, and we will be working tirelessly to work with scrutiny, with the executive portfolio holders to ensure that we can deliver that much more integrated, understandable and transparent financial information. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Claire. Much appreciated. So the recommendations are on page 105 and 107 of the agenda pack. Councillor Bunday did move those recommendations. Can I have someone to second them, please? Councillor Edwards, thank you very much. So that's moved and seconded. Can I have a show of hands, please?
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. So we now move on to item 7, Housing Revenue Account, HRA, Final Budget 25-26 and the Medium Term Financial Plan. I'd like to invite Councillor Hakewell to address the meeting. Councillor Hakewell, you have a maximum of 3 minutes.
Thank you, Leader. I'm assuming it'll always be 3 minutes, but thank you for reminding me. I'd like to draw your attention to page 387. Would you like me to pause whilst colleagues get to see that? 387, item 1.7.1 in this easy-to-read document. If it helps, I'll read it out. 1.7.1. The ongoing maintenance of existing stock, such as heating replacement, insulation, low-energy LED lighting in communal areas, also help to increase the energy efficiency of the existing stock. Consideration will be given to how new methods of building construction, such as the air source heat pumps that were used at Hampden Crescent, interestingly enough under Kettering Borough. On page 431, Appendix C, 431, Appendix C, that budget shows heating upgrades of £550,000 per year for 4 years, the same amount each year, which with inflation means we are spending less every year in real terms. Multiple items on that spreadsheet forecast are the same for each of the next 4 years, meaning that we are investing less in our tenants' homes year on year. By definition, inflation itself and building inflation eats away. I was happy to hear the leader champion the most vulnerable in our community. I agree with him and always have. As a very specific example in my ward, and no doubt other councillors' wards, is the old irreparable oil-fired boilers failing as no spare parts are available, particularly leaving older residents in rural areas without heat or water, sometimes in the coldest days of winter. Providing temporary electric heaters and small grants is beneficial, but it doesn't tackle the problem of decaying stock of houses and increasing revenues spent on repairs. When is the council going to invest significantly in greener, reliable energy? This is such an obvious way of meeting the net zero and helping our older residents to save money and live in comfortable homes. And again, I say especially in our rural homes where oil-fired heating is the only option, and that option is becoming more and more expensive year by year. Thank you, Chairman, for giving me the chance to speak.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hakewell. Now I'd like to invite Councillor Bunday to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just in answer to Councillor Hakewell's question with regard to the medium-term financial plan, the capital expense, which you refer to, is always dictated by the value of the stock, and that's the way it's done. So it would be a level figure that's sitting in there. The housing revenue account is a separate ring-fenced account within the council for the income expenditure associated with its housing stock. The 25-26 budget and medium-term plan shows a balanced position for the HRA and will support the development of the 30-year business plan that will be informed by the housing strategy. The housing revenue account report sets out the rent increase for 25-26 as agreed by the tenant advisory panel of 2.7%, which is CPI plus 1%, as outlined in the autumn statement. The scrutiny process for the draft HRA budget proposals was undertaken by the Corporate Resources Committee at their meeting on the 17th of January 2025. Summary and comments are made that were made are set out in Appendix D. As of the 1st of April 2024, Northants owned 8,081 tenanted 915 leasehold properties, as shown in Table 1 at 4.2, with which is expected to realise an income of £41 million. The Chief Finance Officer reviews the level of reserves required to support the housing revenue account on an annual basis as part of their risk assessment of the HRA budget, as shown in Appendix C. The Executive Director for Finance and Performance has assessed that the minimum level of balances, taking all known risks into account, and has aligned the retained minimum level of reserves to 5% of the total budget, as recommended by SIPFA. Therefore, the minimum balance will be amended from £1.45 million to £2.1 million for the HRA. There are some significant changes to the right to buy principles as outlined in 4.12 to 4.13 of this report, which will enable the Council to invest more into new properties through utilising of right to buy receipts, and will help to reduce the erosion of the existing housing stock, as reflected in the HRA capital programme of £54.9 million. And additional acquisitions of new building programmes will increase the number of housing stock for the HRA. The draft budget for 25-26 is £42.765 million as set out in Appendix 8, rising to £47.269 million over the period covered by the medium-term financial plan set out in Appendix B. And with that, Chair, I'm happy to propose the recommendation at paragraph 3.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bunday. Councillor Rowley has indicated to speak.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, very happy with the proposals in front of us. Happy that the Tenants Advisory Board panel have agreed the 2.7% increase. It's always, the tenants always not necessarily wanting the rent increase, but do understand that the rent increase means that there's more money in the HRA fund to do the maintenance and repairs that's needed. It's great to see in the report that there's £900,000 extra in the HRA budget this year. £900,000 of that going to maintenance. This has been offset by Claire and Mark and the team's excellent work on the loans and the loan repayments. So when the loans are maturing and paid off, we've got more money in the HRA to move forward. To probably confirm what Councillor Hakewell said in terms of the medium term, it is fixed at points in time, but as these loan repayments come in, that releases money into the HRA, so we have got more money to do the maintenance and benefit our residents. Do take exception with what Councillor Hakewell said about our decaying stock. It is not decaying. We have a lot of older buildings that have got, some have in the villages got oil-fired central heating. We are working to get that so they've got more efficient energy, more efficient heating, but we can't just throw in heat pumps because they're old buildings. It wouldn't work properly in those scenarios. So we're using the best of our funds to make sure that they get the most efficient heating that they can moving forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Rowley. I'm just looking around the table. Is there any other comments from executive members on this before I go back to Councillor Bunday? Councillor Bunday, would you like to move the report, and I will find you a seconder, please?
Yeah, I'm very happy to move the report, Chair.
Thank you very much. Would someone like to second that report? Councillor Nicholl. Thank you very much. So the recommendations are set out on page 379 of the agenda pack. They've now been moved and seconded. Can I have a show of hands, please?
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. So we now move on to agenda item 8, Capital Programme 25 to 29. I'd like to invite Mr. Chris Lambert to the meeting to address us, and you have a maximum of 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'd like to focus on the HRA capital programme here, specifically the planned £18.3 million spend on new builds, new council houses. A look at the capital programme published this time last year shows a similar sum planned, and the previous year, and the previous year, and so on. Yet the number of council-owned properties, council houses, has decreased over the same period, down from 8,239 in February 2021 to 8,081 in February 2025. You plan to build council houses, but you hardly build any. Doesn't this just highlight your complete lack of ambition for those on the waiting list for a council house? Meanwhile, there's a housing crisis. Private rents are unaffordable. Houses for sale are not being built in sufficient numbers because of the total reliance on the private sector. And homelessness is on the rise. And you're doing next to nothing to increase the supply of housing. You should have built hundreds of council houses by now, but you have failed to do so. Isn't it true that there's no intention to build, and there never has been? Why are you letting down people who want a council house? What's the explanation for your failure to build the council houses you're always promising in your capital programme? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stambra. Sorry, Mr. Stambra, sorry. Old habits, sorry. So I'd like to invite Councillor Hakewell to join the meeting. You have a maximum of 3 minutes, Councillor Hakewell, as you know.
My comments are all about the capital programme. In Appendix B, I don't know whether, Chair, you want me to wait for you to find it, but I thought I'd print it out here so that I could repeat it. Appendix B, Demographic Service Demand, Northamptonshire Traveller Unit, enhanced provision to deal with unauthorised encampments in NNC area. That particular line talks about increasing 29,000 this year. Whilst further down in Appendix B, as I'm sure you've now picked it up, Leader, Demographic Service Demand Northamptonshire Traveller Unit part reversal of enhanced provision to deal with unauthorised encampments in NNC area with a saving of £50,000 a year. we talk about the community understanding our budgets, but in that page, we've said we're increasing and then we've taken it out. Reducing resourcing for the team that deals with unauthorised encampments infers that there are less such incidents, and thus investment of over 3 million over 10 years at Rothwell Green Space is trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist. Very poor use of scarce capital borrowing powers. I'm told there are very low numbers of unauthorised encampments compared to the past, and yet this capital programme plans to spend millions. The forward plan initially showed that the issue around development of the proposed space at Rothwell Green Space would be debated on the 16th of January. This was in the capital programme. On page 429, I don't mind if I wait for 429, it says 1.136 million in the capital budget under the heading Travellers Temporary Stopping Site. The executive forward plan highlighted this issue was to be debated, and that was announced on the 16th of October, and it was supposed to be decided on the 16th of January. It now doesn't appear on the December to March forward plan at all. Why does this budget include 1.3 million under this heading? In the meantime, apparently alerted by Councillor Howes in a phone call to Council Rothwell, on the 18th of December, Councillors Brown and Jelly, Cedrin Brown, announced on social media that an alternative
Sorry, Councillor Hakewell, just want to stop
was
you
more
there.
appropriate.
Councillor Hakewell.
It's all about the capital plan.
No, you're naming individual councillors,
Yeah.
which is unacceptable. You're talking about a paper which doesn't have their names in there. It's not relevant for you to be naming other councillors.
I won't name any more councillors. Announced on social media that the alternative site was more appropriate and to be considered, inferring that Rothwell Green Space would not be built on, that a report would be published. Where is this alternative site? Why is there no consultation?
Councillor Hakewell, you know the rules of engagement.
I do know the rules of engagement.
It's not relevant to this paper that
It
you're
is.
talking
It's
about.
the 1.3 million capital plan.
I'm just going to refer to the monitoring officer for some advice. If you could just
I'm sure I wish you would, but stop the clock, because I intend to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Hakewell. Yes, the clock has been stopped. There is obviously reference in relation to stopping sites in the capital programme report, but what I would say is the advice is to speak in general terms as it's presented into the report and refrain from calling in and speaking to individual sites and individual comments that councillors may or may not have made in a different set of circumstances.
So basically, this is chaotic and not comfortable with the people of Rothwell, who have absolutely no idea why this money is in a capital programme when it seems the council is not going to deliver it. It leaves the whole capital programme in doubt as to its validity. And thank you for letting me finish.
You're welcome, Councillor Hakewell, but we have professional officers here who spend a lot of time putting these plans and stuff together. I think it's disingenuous to say that this is chaotic. And would recommend that you withdraw that comment. Okay. No, it's okay. We've given you the opportunity. Thank you. Councillor Maxwell, it's your turn. You have a maximum of 3 minutes.
.7 of place and economy. I am pleased that we've received 10.3 million to access for the next 4 years bus services improvement. Which bus service will it be used for, and will it be for the villages to be more connected? 2. Children's services have received 730k. What will it be used for? 3. The new 11 million investment in primary and secondary investment, including 1 million from Section 106, will this 1.6 million earmarked for Stanton Cross Secondary School be a 7-4 form entry? How many children will this be for, and how long will it take to plan and deliver for 2025 or 2026? The reason for asking is that the new housing which has already been built here will it be open in time this year, or is it scheduled for 2026? Also, will it be built next to the primary and junior school? This school was a year late and is a two-form entry. I ask these questions because parents need to know when they can use it. Huxlow School in Earthingborough needs replacing. When will this happen? Lastly, the 87k for Wollaston multi-use games area funded by the Section 106 funds. What does this include, and will it be open to the public? And another great project, but this will clearly add to the school's extension. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Councillor Maxwell. I'd like to invite Councillor Bunday to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. Taking the questions in reverse, I'm sure that the various executive members will want to respond to your questions with regard to the various educational things. The 50,000 saving for traveller provision, that's basically, I would suggest, down to the NTU transformation and doing things better, as we reported at an executive meeting not very long ago. As far as the HRA capital amount, plans are there. We have to wait for affordability, and the right to buy rules have been very, very prescriptive on what we could do, and the wriggle room, that's now got a lot better, so I think you'll see things moving. And also, significant borrowing costs do prevent a lot of capital investment going forward. The Council is a major investor in vital community infrastructure in North Northamptonshire. This investment is set out within the Council's capital programme. This report is important in that it sets out the capital programme for 25-26 and the indicative medium-term financial plan for North Northamptonshire Council, as shown in Appendices B and C, which looks to invest £208.5 million over the next 4 years, consisting of the General Fund programme of £153.6 million and the HRA programme of £54.6 million. The medium-term capital programme seeks to support the realisation of the Council's vision and corporate objectives in delivering a brighter, better future for our residents in North Northamptonshire. The capital investment made by this Council are prioritised on the basis of our corporate plan. This ensures that investment made target our areas of greatest need and impact in our local communities. Focusing on projects such as disabled adaptations, school improvements and extensions, and various property and environmental projects, supporting vulnerable children through greater care accommodation, together with significant investment in the highways infrastructure network over and above the Integrated Transport Grant funding. The budget also sees significant investment into new housing stock and improving decent home standard for all tenants through the HRA. The development pool also holds projects that are indicative of future investment and will be subject to completing a satisfactory business case prior to executive approval and inclusion within the formal programme. New investments, including movements from the developments pool, have been put forward as part of the revised main programme for 25-26 for approval by Council, as shown in paragraph 5.7. As part of the budget process, the capital strategy at Appendix A has been reviewed, together with the capital approval process, which has now been aligned, resulting in the proposed changes to the Constitution as set out in Appendix E. And with that, Chair, I'm happy to propose the recommendations at Section 3.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bunday. So I've got some people that want to talk. Councillor Howes.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So I'd just like to address some of the comments made by some of the speakers. Firstly, the capital programme still has an allocation for a stopping site. It's always been this administration's ambition to provide a stopping site, as it's been needed for some time, and it will be definitely needed for the future. That is why it remains in the capital programme. In regards to the comments made to Rothwell Town Council, it was certainly not inferred, and I think we need to be absolutely clear that the Rothwell site is no longer going to be used. That would be predetermining the decision of a future executive. The communication to Rothwell Town Council was very clear that the administration had got other options and a paper was coming to a future executive. And the third and final thing, Chair, is in relation to the NTU in terms of the discrepancy of an increase and a decrease. That is because on a future budget, we predicted an increase in the service for our out-of-hours provision, which has now subsequently changed because we can now provide that service in a more cost-effective way. So hopefully that clarifies the confusion for Councillor Hakewell in terms of the budget. But I'd also like to make the point that this is a very good example of a previous point that he made about an improvement of services. He inferred that the a reduction in services that was costing the taxpayer more. This is another example where the taxpayer is gaining from an increase and an enhancement of services. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Howes. Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Chair. Just to answer Councillor Maxwell's questions, and thank you for your continued support in children. And I know you have a lot to do with the schools, certainly in your area, so thank you for that. There's 737k for childcare expansion. So this is to do with early years, and it's creating nursery schools within schools. So schools had an opportunity to apply for that funding if they could be able to do that, and I think there were 6 schools that put forward an expression of wish to be able to do that, and this is what this grant is funding for. The 11 million new investment in primary and secondary school expansions, that's to do with existing schools, to expand them, to create extra spaces for our children that are coming into the area, and that's to do with that. The 1.2 million for Hanwood Park Secondary and the 1.06 million for Stanton Cross. I can tell you they are not the final figures for those schools, because actually if we could build a school for £1 million, we would be building hundreds of them. But on this, we are waiting for the Department of Education to give the final go with this. But I would be lying to Councillor Maxwell if I said that it will be built in September 25, because that only gives us a matter of 6 months. And it has to go through a planning stage, like any other new build has to go through a planning stage, which we are just waiting for the Department of Education to put that forward. So the likely date will be 2027, but don't hold me to that, because obviously we are just waiting on the government officials to determine that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Edwards. Councillor Brackenbury.
Thank you very much, Chair. And yes, looking down the capital programme and the development pool, there is a lot of very good projects in the pipeline. I think, Councillor Edwards, you've already recognised the considerable investment that's taken place in SEN provision right up and down Northamptonshire, and that's hugely to be welcomed. The investment in the highways is, of course, something that everybody in this room sees day in, day out, and we need to make sure that we're keeping working on highways maintenance and, of course, the new highways projects, which are exemplified in the development pool, both on the A43 and the famous Isham bypass. I welcome investment in flood alleviation. Obviously, that's been a matter of considerable concern to residents in some areas over this winter and over previous winters. it's not something, flood alleviation isn't something that's going to get any better with the warmer, wetter winters that we seem to be experiencing. And of course, it is something we are going to have to work with partners and other agencies to make sure that we are providing the best possible flood protection for our residents. So there's a lot to unpack in this ambitious capital programme. It's good to see it. Again, thanks to you, Councillor Bunday, thanks to you, Mrs. Edwards, and thanks to all the team who've put it together. And like other colleagues, I commend this programme to the executive.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brackenbury. Next speaker is Councillor Howe.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, actually just wanted to address the question that Councillor Maxwell made with regards to the Wollaston Section 106 investment. So this is obviously a really good news story because it's great to see Section 106 monies being used, and this is to improve the Mugger and associated facilities in association with the Wollaston Parish Council. And it's for the delivery of the project would provide the growing community with a fully upgraded multi-use games area, and the new surfaces will enable the village to offer additional recreational sports such as small-sided football, netball, basketball, futsal, handball, I'm not overly sure what that is, to be honest, tennis, pickleball, excuse me, and junior cricket coaching. It will also allow flexible formats for those activities such as walking football, netball and street basketball. So it will be accessible to the community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to say how delighted I am to be able to demonstrate that the Council continues in its desire to move towards a greener and decarbonised future, and that's reflected in the capital programme with the treescape funding, the local electric vehicles infrastructure and our corporate property decarbonisation project. In part, some of those funds have been able to come forward because of the £1 million investment, climate change investment fund that we committed right at the beginning of our administration. That's enabled us to do the kinds of detailed work and data gathering that enables us to then apply for funding and draw really significant amounts of money into the council towards those really vital programmes. So I'm delighted to see those there, and I'm confident we'll see further funds being drawn into the council as we continue over the next few years. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Harrison. Councillor Rowley.
Thank you, Chair. To answer some of the questions that were raised, Councillor Buckingham will be really pleased to hear that today's papers were released for next week's exec that has the housing strategy in there with the request to go to consultation, which will outline our strategy for the next 5 years for the council housing. In terms of the right to buys, everyone knows that up until early last year, right to buy, we only were allowed to spend something like 30% of the money on new housing, and we had to fund the rest in capital, which was highly restrictive, hence the low numbers. But the current situation is that we can use 100% of that moving forward, but we've got to do it in 2 years, so it's unlikely we will build new houses. We will buy new housing off the markets or from developers pre-built. But the right to buy is also being used to buy temporary accommodation to help residents who are stuck in temporary accommodation so they don't have to go into paid accommodation. So it's dramatically improving the situation for the people who find themselves in that situation, but helping the council save so we can keep the HRA budget doing the maintenance it needs to do.
Thank you very much, Councillor Rowley. I'm just going to go back to Councillor Bunday just to quickly sum up and move his report, and I will find you a seconder.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's quite apparent from what we've said today that transformation actually weaves its way through absolutely everything within this organisation. And transformation is a journey that never ends. We have a very ambitious capital programme. It's dependent on priorities, affordability, and also prudent borrowing. Our capital programme walks hand in hand with our Treasury Management Policy, Chair. And with that, I'm happy to propose the recommendations.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Councillor Bunday. So that report has been moved. Can I look for someone to second that report? Councillor Harrison, thank you very much. The recommendations are set out on page 398 of your agenda packs. They've been moved and seconded. Can I have a show of hands, please?
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. So, urgent items of business. I can confirm that I have received no requests to consider any urgent items of business at this meeting. So that concludes the business of the agenda, and I would like to thank everyone for their attendance today, all officers, elected members, members of the public, and the online viewing community as well. So with that, I close the meeting. Thank you very much and have a safe journey home.